Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Jonny Lipsham.
Yeah, I had the mic on mute. Sorry about that. So I'll start again. Yes. You can hear me now. I had the mic on mute. I forgot to unmute it. That's twice in the last month that I have done that, I think. Anyway, you guys should hear me now. So I'll start again. Yeah, Ken, thank you. I know. I saw it in the chat. We're good. So you should be able to hear me now. Yeah, you guys should be able to hear me now because my mic is on and it's coming through OBS, so you should hear me. So you can all stop posting in the chat that you can't hear me and there's no audio. Because I got the message, I saw it, I saw you guys posting. So we're good, sorry about that. So yes, I will just repeat what I was saying. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll repeat what I was saying that you probably couldn't lip read. But yes, I've been fooling around with a melody writing technique because I'm not necessarily the best melody writer in the world. Even though I play piano, I play sax, I play trumpet, and I can improvise. I've been improvising extensively for many, many years, so I've got a good handle on it. But when it actually comes to composing a melody, I'm not necessarily the best at it. So I've been working on a little technique, and it's really, really simple. And I hope that it's something that can help all of you guys. So we will just jump straight into it. I would normally reserve this for Songwriting Simplified, but I think this is important, and I may well actually repeat this again on Wednesday, just by way of reminder, and also to catch those that aren't here tonight as well. So yeah, I think this little technique will help. So here it is. So essentially what you do is you come out with your set of chord changes, and I'm going to play those for you just now. Let's jump over to the screen. Here we go. Okay, so there's my set of chord changes. Now, the way I tend to work when I'm writing music is this is what I do first, by and largely. Now, I've said many times before that composing is something that takes place in my head. I have the whole thing worked out. But in this particular case, all I had really worked out in my head was just a set of chord changes. I knew I wanted a descending bass line that goes down chromatically by semitones. So it starts on an E flat, and then it works its way down until we're on an A flat, and then we go back. So I knew I wanted that. So then it was just a case of finding some nice sounding chords that kind of go with that. But then what I wanted to do was I needed to come up with a simple way to write a melody. And this is what I came up with. What I do is I take the top note of each chord, and that's going to be the basic building block of the melody. So in this case, let's just take the first chord as an example. So the first chord is an E flat major chord, but with a sharp 11 in it. So it's got an A natural instead of an A flat. That would be the normal 11. And then the next chord is a B flat with the D in the bass. And then the next one is a D flat major chord with the sharp 11 again. There's the G, there's the sharp 11. And then we go C minor. And then we go G with B in the bass to B flat 13 sharp 11. F major 7 over A to A flat major 7 flat 5. And then we go back round again. So what I do with a nice set of chord changes like that is to, because they're really quite complicated, it's complex, dense harmony. So what I tend to do, we should have sound because I can see it coming through OBS. So if you don't have sound, then there's something wrong at your end. So I don't know what's going on there, but you guys should be able to hear it. If you guys can't hear it, please do let me know. But you otherwise should be able to hear it now. So with complex harmony like that, what I do with that kind of dense harmony is I could get into all sorts of weird sounding melodies, but the thing is, at the end of the day, I'm going to have to be able to sing this. Ultimately, I'm going to have to be able to sing this. So it needs to be singable, and it needs to be a melody that the listener can understand, and the listener can grasp hold of, and not go, stop messing with my head, and all of that. And start, thinking that I'm Belgian or something ridiculous like that. So, so here's what I do. And here's an idea if you are struggling with melody writing for you to do. Even if you're not using complex harmony like I am, this will still apply. Even if you're using simple, even if you're using basic triadic harmony, you can still do the same thing, okay? What I do is I take the top note of the chord, and that is the basic building block of my melody. So in this case, we've got the A, and then the next chord, the F is at the top, and then the next chord, we're on a G at the top, and then we're back down to that F again. And now we're up to an F sharp. And then we're going back up to a G. Okay. And then we're going down to an E. And a D. And then we're going to go all the way back up to that A again. For the second half of the melody. Alright? So, if I was to play that just as a single note, one note per bar with the electric piano, the bass and drums, hopefully you'll get a clearer idea of what this sounds like. And so what I did ultimately with this particular piece is, having then got those as my bare bones building blocks, was I then used what I call enclosures. An enclosure is, I use notes surrounding those main notes to give some interest, some embellishment to those notes, because otherwise on their own they sound a bit boring, right? So, you know, kind of that kind of thing. You know, that kind of thing. So those are all my little embellishments using notes from above and notes from below, surrounding notes. So starting on this A, I've got the use of the B flat, the A, and the G. I can't really use the A flat because it won't really fit the chord at that point. So you're kind of restricted a little bit to the harmonic content on that particular chord. That's not to say I couldn't use that A flat. I could use that A flat as a little passing note, provide a little bit of tension, and then resolve it to either the G or the A. I could do, I could do either of those, and that would work. And so that's what I'm doing with each chord. And so what you end up with is this. Now, admittedly, I messed up the ending of the melody a little bit there the second time round. That's because my wife walked in at the moment that I was recording that and asked if I wanted a cup of tea. And I got a little distracted. So the fingers kind of didn't behave themselves at that point. But I think you get the general idea here of what I'm talking about. And that is, use the top notes of a chord to create your melody. So if I was to simplify the chord changes, and we'll do something in a much easier key. So let's do C major, just because you're by and large working with white notes. So if I was to do C major in let's see, second and I'll keep in root position. So my melody note is here. It's the G, which is the 5 of the chord. So if I'm going to go from the G to the F, my melody's going up to the A. And then let's say I go back. And then I go down to the A minor. So now my melody is the E. And then I go up to the F for the D minor. And then the E for the G13 chord. And then the root. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that. Okay, so nice and simple. That's the bare bones of my melody. So I can decorate this again by using those enclosure notes, next door notes, above or below. So And that easily is the A section to your tune. And then you can take that, you can develop that little melody idea that you now have without even trying. The melody has written itself. All you've done is take the top note of the chord, move it about a little bit for each chord, and join those two top notes together, and the melody has literally written itself. You haven't had to try. You haven't had to think of any motivic ideas. You haven't had to think of any phrases. You haven't had to think of anything at all. You've been entirely passive and just using the top note of each chord and moving them about, and that's it. As soon as you've done that, you have your melody. And that little melody right there that I just literally composed on the spot in less than 90 seconds, I can now do something with. I can have a whole second section that develops some of those ideas. Because I now have ideas. I now have a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of little melodic phrases that I created out of nothing, and I can develop them. I can extend them. I can make them more dramatic. I can make them less dramatic. I can be static. I can do all sorts of different things now, because I'm now armed with ideas, because all I did was take the top note of the chords and move them about. So let's say, for example, you want the melody to be in the middle rather than on top. Now, for most of the time, for most people, I would say when you're composing your music and you're new to it, keep the melody on the top. This might change, however, if you decide, hey, for my second section, I want a lower sound to contrast with the higher sound that I had with those upper notes of the chord. So for my second section, I could say, hey, I want my second section to be in kind of the subdominant. So we're in F. Now, let's say I decide I want that to be root position, so that we're on this note here. How do we get back to the key of C? And we're back in the key of C. But all I did, again, was kind of move the melody. So the melody kind of started, I mean, it's still on the top of the chord technically, but it's kind of a little bit lower down. And ignore the silly little thing at the top there. But I hope you get the idea. Alrighty. So, we're about halfway through, more or less. So I hope you like that. And I hope that that gives you some simple ideas to take away with you to write melody. Because melody writing can be as easy or as complicated as you want it to be. It can be as simple as what I just did just there with just the top note and using enclosures, next door neighbor notes, to join your two top notes from chord to chord together. And that's a simple little method that you can apply, and it will work for you guaranteed every single time. And you can do it with simple harmony, or you can do it with complex harmony like I did with my little piece here. So yeah, go for it. Have some fun with it. Develop the concept, expand the concept, and maybe change it up a bit. Maybe instead of having the melody on the top, being the top note of the chord, maybe make the melody this note here. Maybe make that middle note the melody point. You can do that. And the cool thing is, it might not sound so great just on the piano, but when you orchestrate it out to different instruments, let's say you have a flute playing the melody in the first section, which is playing all the top notes of the chord, and then your second section, you use the middle note of the chord or the bottom note of the chord. You could have, I don't know, an oboe or a cello or a clarinet, something like that, take up those notes, and you'll get a nice contrast, and you'll have a different sound, a different instrument taking up your melody and developing the ideas. And that is what you want when you're writing a piece of music that is going to be simple, easy for your listener to get hold of, easy for your listener to understand, and effortless to listen to, even if everything underneath that melody is complicated and dense and chromatic harmonically. There's so much you can do with this little technique. So anyway, let's get over to your questions, and we'll see what we have. Marcus has solved his audio problem, which is good. Glad about that. Let's see. John Lake says, simple is my middle name. Yeah, simple never has been my middle name. I tried. Bobby says, gospel with a little jazz. Yeah, that's the way I like to think of kind of what I do, and certainly what this piece was, anyway, that I improvised. Bobby says, you mess with my head every time I listen to you. One day I'll learn something. You know what? You're always learning. I'm always learning. And even if I don't necessarily understand what I'm receiving the first time I hear it, certainly, sometime later with trying things out, experimenting, the eureka moment happens, the light goes on, and I go, that's how it works. That's what it means. And I'll tell you this, I'll tell you the truth, folks. That was music notation reading for me for most of my life. I was taught very clearly, very carefully at high school, at college, at university, how to read music notation. And it wasn't until my final year at university when the eureka moment went on and the light bulb moment happened, and I went, that's how it works. And from then on, reading and writing music was more natural to me than reading and writing English words on paper or on a computer screen. It was just a case of getting that knowledge to go from here down to here where it could be digested and understood. Once it was here and it was digested and understood, then I could apply what I had been being taught with ease. Up until that point, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. It didn't matter. I just couldn't get it. And how, so you're probably wondering, how on earth did I get through high school, college, and university and still come out with an honors degree in music and a diploma in musicology. How did I get there without being able to read music? Well, that's because I have perfect pitch and I have an almost perfect musical memory. So I only need to hear something once and I remember it. So if somebody plays something to me, which is what I relied upon for most of my life, I could remember it and I could play it right back. But if they played something incorrectly, I would also play that same thing incorrectly because I didn't know any better. I was relying upon the information that they were giving me being correct. And if it wasn't, I would make exactly the same mistake that they did because I would play literally what I heard. And so I relied upon good people being able to tell me, being able to play things for me correctly if they wanted me to play something. So yeah, that's how I got around it. Perfect pitch, perfect memory. And so that meant I could stare at a piece of paper and make it look like I was reading music, but I wasn't. I was remembering what somebody had sat and played it for me, and then I could play it. So, yeah. Gerard said, also I'm writing with chords that if you're in a key of C or any major key, what I do is I play a C6 scale around the major key. A blues song, you do the flat third and flat fifth. Yeah. Yeah, you can certainly build melodies out of scales, absolutely. And a blues scale or a pentatonic scale is a great place to start because it doesn't really matter what the harmonic material is. Those notes are always going to fit. So, if you're in the key of C, C, D, E, G, A, those notes are always going to fit. Guaranteed. Even if you're on an F major chord, those notes will fit. And if you're in a kind of more bluesier style, the blues scale will fit beautifully, where you have the root, flat third, 4, flat 5, natural 5, flat 7, and octave. Those notes will fit 100% guaranteed. So yes, you can build melody based on scale patterns, for sure. I don't often do it that way. I tend to think more harmonically, and maybe some of that's to do with me being a piano player and a bass player, but, even if I have my saxophone out or my clarinet or my trumpet and I'm improvising, I'm thinking more harmonically than I am thinking about scales. I don't tend to really think about scales when I'm improvising because they just get in the way. I'm not going, okay, this chord coming up is a D minor 11. That means I can play Dorian scale. Great. The next chord is a G13 sharp 11. Okay, I cannot play a Mixolydian scale because the C natural will class against the C sharp, which is the sharp 11. So I'm going to have to play C Lydian dominant. I don't think like that when I'm improvising. I'm thinking about the notes in the chord and enclosures around each one of those notes. So I'm thinking about the G, I'm thinking about the B, I'm thinking about the D, I'm thinking about the E and the F. I'm thinking about those notes because those are my basic chord tones for a G7 chord. But I'm also thinking about enclosure notes around each one of those notes. Note above. And so I'm thinking about those notes, and that simplifies things a lot easier when you're improvising. But if you're creating melody, not necessarily spontaneously like improvising is, but if you're creating melody very deliberately and thoughtfully, yeah, a scale will fit, a scale will work for you. You just have to write in a way that's going to make using that scale make sense rather than just meander. Which brings me back to why I use the top note of each chord as my bare bones building blocks in the first place. Is to avoid meandering. Because I can use enclosures and passing notes to create the melody for me without it just kind of, being a random I could do that all day. But the listener's going to get switched off by that very quickly. So what do? I need to find a way to join things up and make things make sense. Much like you do when you're speaking. When I'm talking to you guys like I am now, I'm improvising. I have a thought in my head. I have a concept that I want to explain to you guys. And so I am spontaneously developing sentences, and I'm using enclosure words, words that join other words together to create a sentence that you guys can understand and make sense to you. So it is with melody writing. At the moment, hopefully, you guys are attentively listening and are taking this stuff in, and hopefully it's helping you. And hopefully it's giving you ideas to go and try out. That's my hope. If that's not happening for you, then I apologize, and I need to do better at teaching, and I need to do better at communicating. But, the two go hand in hand. Melody writing and speaking, or writing a book, or writing a letter. You join words together to form a sentence that expresses a thought that you have in your head. And so you have joining words like but and the and those kind of things. And they help form your sentences. So it is with music. I'm starting with the important words. Those were my important words in my sentence that I knew I needed to get across with this piece of music. The enclosures help make those make sense, because on their own they sound weird. That sounds weird on its own. So you have to do those enclosure words that join those things together. And that's the extra notes. The notes above, notes below, passing notes. Those are the joining words that make those main notes make sense. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Yes, Mike, we are. We're kind of unpacking a little bit of what you and I were talking about earlier this afternoon. Because I thought, actually, if it's going to help you, it's going to help a whole bunch of other people. So why the heck not? Alps Media with the $10 donation. Thank you very much. He says, this is great, Johnny. Well, I appreciate that very, very much. And I'm glad you are enjoying it. And I'm glad it's helping you. Bob Studios says, that's how I learned. Cool. I'm glad. Let's see. What else do we have? Marcus is heading off. Okay, Marcus, take care. Jay-Z in sentences. Yeah, one day he might actually grasp sentences. She Studios says, mixed Lydian scales are fun too. Yes, they absolutely are. I use them a lot in improvising. But like I said, I don't tend to think about them that way. I'm not really thinking about a mixed Lydian scale. I'm not thinking about a Lydian flat 2 scale, or, if we're talking about major modes rather than minor modes. And I'm not thinking about Locrian or super Locrian. I'm not even thinking about Lydian flat 9. I'm not thinking about those kind of scales either. I think about chord tones and any extensions there might be to that chord, and notes above and notes below, and things that I can use to join those things, those chord tones together to make something improvisational make sense. Because to me that's easier than just going, okay, I'm going to use a Dorian scale here. I'm going to use a mixed Lydian scale here. I'm going to use F Dorian here. I'm going to use E flat Dorian here. I don't think like that. And I think as soon as you start thinking lots and lots of scales for each chord, you don't have time to think anymore, and you don't have time to create melody which is what improvisation is, you just end up just playing scales, and you just end up playing exercises that you've learned and licks that you've learned. You end up kind of not really saying very much or communicating very much to your audience. Whereas if you start thinking instead about, here's a G7 chord. So I might be thinking of a little phrase that might go something like this. I'm not thinking scales. I'm thinking, these are the notes of the chord. Great, I'm already armed and dangerous with notes I can use to make melody. And now I'm just going to use nearby notes to join those things together. And it's a far easier way to improvise. And I think that by and largely explains why, after John Coltrane's Giant Steps, which is taken at a tempo of anything between 280 and 320 beats a minute, and there are 2 chords in each bar, so those chords fly by, and if you're lucky, you get the time to play 4 notes on each chord. So if you're thinking about a scale for each one of those chords, by the time you've thought about the scale, the music is gone, and they're on to the 4th chorus, and you're still trying to play chorus number 1. You're stuck. You can't think like that. You've got to think about those bare bones and then joining those bare bones together at that kind of tempo. So I can see why, kind of after Giant Steps, Miles Davis then went into the studio and cut Kinda Blue. Took the tempo nice and down, to a nice moderate tempo, and said, screw chords. Let's forget about chords. Let's just base everything off of 7 notes, and that's it. This entire piece is going to be built out of 7 notes. You build the harmony out of those 7 notes. You build the melody and the improvisation out of those 7 notes. And everyone went, wow, I don't even have to think anymore. I don't have to think about scales and stuff like that. I can just make melody. I can make music. I can relax. I can be creative. Because everything is just built out of 7 notes. And it's no wonder that Kinda Blue became a massive monster mega hit for Miles Davis. And is widely regarded by everybody as the greatest jazz recording ever made. And that's why. Because the audience can listen to it and not go, I don't understand where this is coming from. Because everything is based out of little scales, little modes. Makes total sense. Modal jazz is great fun to play because you don't have to think. You can just make music. The music doesn't get in the way of making music anymore. So, yeah. And there ends the university jazz course lecture for today. But yeah. Ken says, I recently came across something called negative harmony as a good way to write a B section. Have you ever tried that or have any opinion on it? Yeah, I rather suspect you are referring to Jacob Collier, the English composer, improviser, mega music genius extraordinaire who is still in his early 20s, hasn't even figured out how to shave yet, and has already been signed to Quincy Jones's record label and has, I think, 3 Grammys under his belt already. And he's not even 30 yet. But the kid is a genius. And yes, there is such a thing as negative harmony. But see, before you can get to negative harmony, you have to understand how basic, fundamental harmony works to start with. negative harmony and microtonal music is kind of way, way, way advanced. Microtonal lo-fi hip-hop music is great. I've experimented with it. It's great fun. It's quite complicated to get your head around and to learn how, modulating from G major to G half sharp major works. But it works. And it definitely sounds very subtly different. And more to the point, it feels different, which is why the listener can perceive the difference. They might not go, oh, we've gone from G, and now we're going... We're going to the key of E flat. That's a very obvious kind of normal, standard harmony way of modulating, changing key so you can have a B section in your piece. What Jacob does is he does something where instead of playing G, he's playing not G sharp, he's playing G half sharp, which is the notes between the cracks, which you can't do on a standard 12-tone equal temperament piano. You have to change to a different form of temperament in order to be able to do negative harmony. You have to go for something like 24-tone just intonation or something like that in order to be able to make it work, because you need to be able to make it work right across all the chords that are available to you in the particular key center that you're in. So if you're in G half sharp major, in just intonation, most of those chords are going to work, but some of them will sound really, really rather out of tune. And the reason why that, to the Western ear, to our, ears that have been conditioned by popular music, jazz, rock music, heavy metal, classical music, the music of Mozart, Beethoven, Berlioz, Wagner, Webern, we are conditioned in the West to listening to a specific sound and a specific intonation and a specific temperament called 12-tone equal temperament. When you start getting into negative harmony, you have to learn about and embrace different temperaments. So things like just intonation or Pythagorean intonation, or 14-tone equal temperament, where the octave, instead of being split between 12 equal semitones, is split between 14 or 24. So instead of having C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, you'd have a note in between the C and the C sharp, and that would be C half sharp, C sharp, D, D half sharp, D sharp, and so on and so forth. So even between the E and the F, you'd have E half sharp going to the F. And that would exist in something like 24-tone equal temperament, where the octave is split into 24 equal microtones. So yeah, that would be negative harmony. It's complicated. So I totally recommend going and studying it. Going and studying microtonal music and negative harmony, definitely go do it. But make sure that you have a proper, thorough, solid grounding in standard Western 12-tone equal temperament and its resulting major-minor tonal system. Once you've got that very, very, very thoroughly under your belt, then certainly I would say you can go and explore microtonal music, just intonation, Pythagorean intonation, and different intervallic relationships. For sure, you can go and do that. Let's see what else we got, because I think a lot of that might have been over a lot of people's heads. Bob Studio says, if you ever play live for a long time, you get what it is to play around with scales. Yeah, for sure. I just try not to think about it. In fact, when I'm on stage and I'm improvising with my band, the last thing I want to do is think about a particular scale over a particular chord. So you do the work in the practice room where you hone and you develop your craft, which is practicing the scales, practicing the enclosures, practicing the passing notes and all of that stuff. You do that in your practice room so that when you go out on the stage, the last thing, the furthest thing from your mind is chord and scale relationships and enclosures and devices and things like that. You want to have a completely empty mind of those things because you want to be thinking about creating a melody when you're improvising. Not just to show off your chops. Showing off your chops is great. I enjoy doing it. But really, showing off your chops entertains musicians who understand what your chops are in the first place. But if you really want to entertain an audience, you need to take them on a musical journey. There are some great improvisers I know, personally know, who have phenomenal chops on their instrument. But they also have the remarkable talent for being able to take you on a musical journey through the course of their improvisation. I'm talking about two saxophone players in particular who are very definitely still alive. Kenny Garrett being one, American sax player who played with Miles Davis, and British saxophonist Ben Castle, who I have known personally for, well, since we were kids. I am quite a bit older than he is, but I'm maybe about 10 or so years older than he is. But we grew up knowing our families knew each other because my parents worked with Ben's parents in the entertainment business. Roy Castle being a comedian, trumpet player, dancer, tap dancer, singer, songwriter. He was an all-round entertainer, and my parents worked with him quite a lot, so I knew Ben growing up as kids. And one of the things that always has impressed me about Ben is his ability to take you on a musical journey and explore not only the range of his instrument and the range of his technical proficiency on the instrument, but take you on a journey emotionally. You get completely caught up in the melody that he is creating spontaneously when he improvises. It's something else. It's, it really does take a very special proficiency in music to be able to do that. Another example would be the great guitarist Pat Metheny, who currently has a band with Antonio Sanchez and Christian McBride. I've seen that trio live, and Pat's playing is phenomenal. He has some extraordinary guitar chops, but he creates the most gorgeous melodies when he's improvising that are dripping with emotion. So really, for me, when I'm here in my studio and I'm at this piano, yes, I play with the scales. Yes, I play with the chord tones. Yes, I play with the enclosures, and I learn those, and I try to figure them out in all 12 major and minor keys and over every possible chord type I can think of, and I drill those here so that when I go out on a gig, I can sit and I can make music. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about those kind of things that I have drilled in here. The fingers do that by themselves. I'm just my fingers at the piano are in the driving seat, and I'm sat at the piano very much the passenger enjoying the ride, to be honest, when I'm on a gig. So I hope you understand that, but that was a very long answer to a short question. John says, I don't think halftone is legal. Well, it is. So So there you go. Peter Brick says, play something made up on the spot, maybe jazzy or bluesy. Yeah, I've kind of done that already, a little bit. I made up a couple of melodies on the spot to kind of demonstrate this whole kind of technique of using the top note for melody and enclosures and that kind of stuff. I guess what I could do a little bit. Let's see. What could I do? What could I do? What could I do? What could I do? To satisfy your craving, we're a little bit low on numbers today. We peaked at, what do we peak at? It's not telling me what we peaked at anymore. 22. We've got 18 people here. So we're a little lower on numbers than we would normally have. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. See, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute the melody of this little set of chord changes. And I'm actually just going to improvise just a little bit on the top of them and kind of see where it takes me. Just for a minute or two. And so on and so forth. There you go. John Lake says Beatles did not use music theory, but it can be fun. Yeah, they actually did. You'd be surprised just how much music theory they actually employed. Whether they knew they were employing it is something different. That is a different subject, but they certainly did employ music theory. From a melody writing point of view, from chord changes, from mood and mode, form, structure, they certainly did employ some music theory, because music theory isn't just kind of cerebral. For a lot of people it can be. Musicologists, of which I am one, music theory can be quite cerebral. It can be stuck up here. But music theory is pointless unless you apply it. So anytime you go E flat, C minor, F minor, B flat 7, you're employing music theory. Because you're going 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. So you're employing music theory. But yeah, I get your message. I get what you're saying. All right, folks, we are done for the night. I will see you all on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. Hopefully, Jonny and I will be able to actually get together and do the show together this time. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, that'll happen. The other thing to bear in mind is that next Friday is the Studio One UK meetup. So if you've never been to that before, myself and Personas, we will be putting out links to the UK meetup, and it would be great to have some of you folks along. Pretty much, it used to be just kind of regional. Hey, this is for UK people. The Illinois one is for Illinois people. The Australian one is for Australian people. The Brazilian one is for... You get the idea. But now it's pretty much open to anybody. So anybody from around the world can come and join the UK meetup. It is 8 p.m. GMT, so that is Greenwich Mean Time. We won't be going over to summertime until, I think, the end of March sometime. And so when that happens, it will become, I think, probably 7 p.m. British summertime when that happens, when we go over to British summertime. But until then, so that'll be Friday, so watch out for the links to that. That'll be plastered all over social media. I'll make sure that our social media guys get onto that, and I'll make sure that Gregor gets onto that as well, because I'll be talking to him on Tuesday this week. So, all right, folks, so until then, I bid you a very good night. Good night.